Something that hit me really hard happened 2 weeks after we brought home our adopted son, and it made me cry, and I asked myself if I can really do this. So 2 weeks after we brought Christian home, I decided to go with him and Elsa in a camp for adoptive families, and it was a really interesting experience because I was alone. Gabi was in Germany and I had to deal with 2 kids by myself, but there were a lot of volunteers who helped me, and it was a good experience. But like I said in the beginning, the way home was so, in a way it was frustrating because he was so new to our family, and I didn't know how to handle him, and I didn't know him. And we came home, and on the way home, 2 hours, he cried constantly without stopping. And I left Elsa with my in-laws, and then I went home with Christian. I put him to bed and I started crying, and it was, in a way, I felt so disappointed because I didn't know what to do to help him, and I saw that he was suffering in a way. I didn't know why, and I felt that helplessness, which probably made me cry and made me ask myself if I am really capable of raising a child that I didn't give birth to. So yeah, this was something that really affected me, and I called Gabi that night and I really brought up the subject about, okay, are we doing this? How are we gonna do this? How are we gonna cope with experiences like this? And Gabi helped me a lot, and he was always really supporting, and this was something that was really important for me because he was in Germany and I was mostly alone with the kids.
It was a big change for us, but it was a big change for him as well. And we realized this, and we try to take the change one thing at a time approach, where we won't try to change his whole universe, but rather just give him some time in the beginning to adjust with a new family, with a new house, with a new everything, relations and so on, and then take one thing at a time and try to change it or improve it or help him learn it. So we tried, I think the first thing we did after he attached a bit to us was food, right?
Yes, right from the beginning we had to.
He wouldn't eat anything, almost anything raw, like fruit or vegetables. So
everything was puree. It was like food for a 6-month-old baby.
Yeah, so after the first week or so, he started to try some vegetables that we were eating with Elsa at the table for breakfast or supper.
I think he had to trust us in the beginning because he was really reluctant because everything was so new, and probably the tastes, everything tasted a little bit different. And once he saw us eating day by day, probably like the same food, or so he started trusting us.
Yeah, I think it was just new for sure. He would take a just small piece of carrot and just look at it or lick it and try to look at it again. And as he saw that Elsa and us, we were eating that stuff, he slowly built up the courage to try it himself as well. So it was just new for him. Everything was new.
Yeah, the first few days he ate so little. We were a little afraid. We thought, okay, what's gonna happen if he's not gonna eat enough? But in time he improved, and he made a lot of progress in this area.
And then when this was kind of okay, the food part, then we moved on to pacifier. Mm-hmm. Yeah, trying to help him use it less and less, because he was using it all the time, during the day, during sleep, I think
the way he coped with everything and all the frustrations he might have felt was through his mouth, eating or sucking on the pacifier or drinking a bottle of milk. So we tried to teach him little by little the ways to express frustration or discontent. So the pacifier was something that we tried to work on slowly and step by step, and it wasn't that bad, I think.
It was fine to take it out for the day when he was awake and playing. Then we started to take it out on the midday
Naps.
sleep, nap.
Mhm.
During the nap, that was okay also.
Yeah.
Sometimes he would protest a bit, cry a bit, but it was fine. And then at the end, we took it out also for the night sleep.
Yeah.
That was a bit tougher, if I remember correctly. But it worked.
I think he had to face so many changes, and like Gabi said, we tried to do it step by step and not so like aggressively, because everything was new to him. And when he came home to us the first 2 or 3 days, I think he would just lay on the couch in the morning for a few hours, just looking around and trying to figure out what's happening with him. And it was, for us, it was in a way sad to see him that he seemed lost, because he just probably didn't know what was happening to him. He was so small.
And sad, I think, because he probably felt abandoned again by his foster mother.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't around anymore. There was some new people around. So I think he probably felt abandoned again.
Yeah.
So we tried to improve these things little by little. Potty training was the next big thing we tried to help him.
Actually, he responded pretty well to potty training. I mean, I didn't expect it to happen too fast, but it was something that he did it. He did it in the end. And now, obviously, I mean, some accidents happen, but it's normal for his age at 4 years old. Sometimes it happens, but he responded pretty well.
Yeah.
We also had to be patient and wait for him, because he had his own timing in his mind probably, and with so many changes and so many input coming from us, from the therapists, from everything around him, he had to take in a lot.
Yeah, I remember he would protest a lot, start crying, because he wouldn't want to sit on a potty or stay there too long, but in the end he did it. So.
And another thing that really surprised me was that I was trying to, we were trying to teach him words, and we knew that he couldn't speak and he couldn't talk, but at least we tried to like point a finger to something that he needed, so he wouldn't just cry and look at that thing, and he would get it. So we tried to help him in this way, and he was really, really resistant when I took his finger and tried to point it in the direction that was the object that he wanted. And we didn't understand why. It was something that we couldn't figure out, but in the end he did that as well. And after a few months of therapy and speech therapy, I think he was able to say words, syllables first and then words.
Yeah, so I think speech therapy helped for sure. What helped as well, I think, is spending time with his cousins. They were a bit older than him. And after he connected to us, we started to take him to our grandparents and cousins and so on. And he did spend quite a lot of them playing all together. I think that helped him quite a lot, this interaction that he didn't have at all, I would say, until then, with kids his age, or just very seldom.
And another thing that I remember, and I also didn't understand why, I think we had a lot of question marks in the beginning, because it was so new for us too. And even though we had the experience with Elsa, bringing Christy home was something different, and we had to adjust and learn a lot of things as well. And one thing was that we would go for walks or go in the park, and I would hold his hand or Elsa's hand, and when Gabi wanted to reach for his hand and take his hand, he was so reluctant that he started crying. I mean, he used to cry for half an hour because he just didn't want to hold Gabi's hand. And we were asking ourselves if he had a father figure or like a masculine figure in the house that he grew up in, because he seemed, I don't know if he was afraid or just he wasn't used to having a father figure. But this was something that we also tried to explain with words, and then also with actions, that sometimes I would hold his hand, sometimes Gabi would hold his hand, and we loved them both. And yeah, he would just have to get used to us probably, and get used to everything.
But this was something that we worked on for a few months, many months, until he started accepting me, I'd say.
Sometimes it happens even now after almost 2 years, but it's really seldom. It's not as often as it was in the beginning. So it's obviously much better. He improved a lot.
I mean, young kids are more connected to their mother in the first years. That's a fact.
Scientifically proven.
Yeah. But it took quite a lot of work to get
to that point.
Christian to kind of relate and trust me, I think. Yeah, so it's maybe a bit still work in progress, but we've seen great improvement there.
We did.
Yeah, and so there are a lot of challenges, but there are joys as well in the process. So I think you mentioned a lot of challenges until now. Yeah, he was, and probably every other kid would be quite resistant to change. They all have their stubbornness. One thing we weren't sure it was if he was so reluctant because everything was new and he didn't understand also what we were asking of him. Remember many times we would ask him to do something and we weren't sure if he wasn't doing it because he didn't want to and wanted to prove who's the boss, or if he really didn't understand what we were asking him to do. So we were, especially in the beginning, quite uncertain how should we react. Should we try to explain more what we want him to do, or should we kind of help him understand that he has to do some things that he doesn't.
We definitely had to practice our patience and just understand that he is a human being, he's different from us, and we did have expectations. I think they're inevitable, but we also had to adjust, and he did pretty well, and he started talking like really fast. I think faster than I expected, at least. I thought he wouldn't be able to talk as soon as he did, but he did, and after a few months he said, I went in another camp with him and Elsa, and he said mama, and it was a nice feeling. It was a nice feeling. I think for me as a mother, for my adopted son to call me mother was something pretty important, a big step. Yeah.
I think another challenge that we had was seeing him very developed physically for his age, quite big, but he was a lot behind emotionally and in terms of development. So it was quite tough to see a toddler, quite a big toddler, act like a baby. And I think if he would have looked like a baby, it would have been much easier for us to cope with that. But seeing and hearing a fully developed toddler cry loudly, there was tougher to cope with, I think, than if we would have had this really small baby. And there was one thing, and the other thing was that we inevitably kept comparing him to Elsa. She's a bit older, and
she's a girl.
Yeah, she's a girl, and
The differences between boys and girls, and we found out later, because I think we thought, okay, if they're almost the same age, the differences shouldn't be that big. But we found out a little bit later from people who work in this field and have more experience than we do, that between boys and girls there are differences. So we had to understand that and just take it in and take it how it was and just try to go along with that.
Yeah, so there were a lot of challenges, but there were joys as well. And we've had different small wins here and there during the journey, and that gave us confidence and helped us go further. We've seen how he developed very clearly with food, with speech, and emotionally, slower than the other things, but he kept developing and developing his trust in us. And
the way he expresses his feelings now, I think he can say, "Mommy, can you come and help me calm?" Which is such a big step for us because, calm down, because he can state his needs and ask for help and for me to comfort him. And he keeps repeating that he loves us very much and he loves Elsa very much and he knows that we love him, so it's nice to see that.
Especially in the beginning, we were very happy to see these signs of development and signs that were showing us clearly that he didn't suffer from autism, because this was still somewhere
in the back of our heads.
What if he seemed not to suffer from autism, but what if he does? These small things, small progresses confirmed that he really didn't suffer from autism. It was just the expression of his way of being after being abandoned.
Yeah, his trauma.
We've seen how his bond to us increased, his trust in us increased. It was very nice and comforting to see that there was progress there.
And he started interacting with Elsa really nicely. And now they play they're just like siblings. They interact really nicely, and it's nice to see after almost 2 years, how he developed and how things evolved and how he changed, and it makes us really happy.
Yeah.
And I think he's happy too.
Yeah, he started to move better. He was barely able to run before. He was looking like he was going to trip over, to stumble. That improved also.
The way he's eating
Yeah.
now, he's more aware of how he eats, because he used to eat a lot until we figured out that he's eating a lot, and then we had to put like a break on that. But now he understands a lot, and
I think one of the biggest things we saw changing was him being able or learning to cope with his pain. That before he had the pacifier, he was eating a lot. He was eating only sweets or what he liked to, what was given to, and now losing these things one at a time. The pacifier first, less and less, and then no pacifier, and then having to eat some healthier food and not as much as he would like to if there was too much. And he would start slowly to cope with his feelings without having these external props like food,
comfort
or
food.
the pacifier and so on. And I think this is one of the bigger wins over time, and the harder thing to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a lot of challenges and a lot of steps and joys and progress that we still see in our journey. It's been 2 years now.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah, since we have it home, and the story is ongoing. So in the next episode, we want to talk about our reasons that people have for adoption, and we think this is critical. It's if you ever want to go on this path to adopt, it's very important for you to clarify your reasons of why you want to adopt. Yeah. And in the next episode, we would like to speak about this, talk about the reasons and why they're critical for us to clarify for ourselves if we want to take this journey.
Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave us a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.
Bye.